So father-daughter relationships are known to impact women's self-esteem, trust, and expectations in a relationship. We don't even realize this. And it's like, I make the connection a lot of times. There's a young lady that I'm mentoring. And when we talk about the abuse that she has gone through in the last 15 years of this marriage, it's very much so like the abuse that her mom and her dad went through. So when you think about your parents' relationship, have you identified or have you thought about some things that you maybe have experienced that could have been connected to that in your own relationships?
Welcome to Lead Like a Girl, where we are empowering everyday women through our stories. I'm your host, Jessica Smith, and I began this journey by sharing my life story. Now, I've joined forces with my longtime friends, Jamie and Corlin, to keep this party going. We met many years ago as young sales girls in our 20s, driven and quickly rising to the top of our industry. As the years went on, life happened, and we all found ourselves in new companies and completely different industries, still striving for success in it all. Career, family, faith, fun. Now, it wasn't easy, but we never stopped moving. Get ready for our real conversations, inspiring stories, and our big life lessons as we share it all. The good, the bad, and the funny. Welcome to Lead Like a Girl.
Good morning, and welcome to another episode of
Lead
it's
Like
good
morning this time. Nobody knows.
Yes, it is good morning. Listen, we are dedicated, y'all. We are dedicated. We're just coming off of Father's Day week. It's been a busy week for us, so we are recording on a Saturday morning because we want to get this message out here. And the first thing I want to say is I really want to dedicate this message. I was thinking about this last night. I want to dedicate this episode to one of my best friends from high school, her dad, Mr. Juan Sanchez, one of the greatest fathers that I've ever met in my life. And I want to dedicate this episode to him. He passed away on Father's Day. And when I say, so I used to call them the Mexican Huxtables because I never knew anyone in my neighborhood or anyone that I knew that was like, rich. And she hates when I say that, but they were rich, but they were just a nice family. And yeah, listen, there's no one that's perfect, but I said this the other day when I was talking about him. There's no such thing as a perfect dad, but I think that one was as close to it, if not the perfect dad. So rest in peace, Juan Sanchez. And I love the Sanchez family and just appreciate good fathers. And that is why I want to talk about this conversation, because I think that sometimes we lose sight of how important it is that we have good relationships with our dads, how important it is that we as women support and foster the good relationships with our daughters and their dads. So I want to kick off this episode with asking you ladies to share a story. And those of you that know my story know that, listen, I was daddy's little girl. I love my dad. Don't misunderstand me, but I did not have a good father. My father was not a good man. He was a drug dealer. He was an abuser, but he took care of his family and he loved his children. That's what I have to say about my dad. He died when I was 11 years old. And I learned after many years of therapy that I was very upset and angry with my dad for dying when I was 11 years old. So that was a whole thing for me, a healing journey. I also dated men that were predators, that were literally 20, 30 years older than me because I had daddy issues. So we have to learn all of these things. Some of you know this, have identified it, but I really hope that this episode resonates with people that maybe are going through this or have gone through it and just help you identify that there is a healing process. So let's talk all things dads. Who wants to kick off? And this could be your biological father. This could be your stepdad. This could be a father figure. But give me a story that is like your most memorable dad story.
I have a great story.
Give it to me.
I'd like to just mention that if anyone watches us on YouTube, that we normally record in the evening after our workday, and this is a morning recording. So
yeah, this is my workout. This is my workout gear, y'all. I'm going to work out right after this.
Yes, Jessica and I are both wearing like tank tops and like hair. I got a hairband, and we're like ready to go. Corlin looks smashing as usual. You're the most.
Corla did her workout last night.
Oh, that's right. Okay. We that's a whole other. Yes. Okay. So
Corla just got out of the gym.
she's already had the workout. Yeah, but otherwise, I really hope people actually watch this.
She's gonna cry. Corla, I'm sorry. Okay, tell your story, Jamie. Tell your story. Okay, tell your story.
Morning recordings are.
I don't know if she's crying because it's funny or if she's crying for the other reason.
Sneak peek into what it's like when we have meetings. Eyes are watering. We have been talking, so we've been on this.
Tell your story, Jamie. Just tell your story.
I'm telling it. Okay. Corlin can edit all these things later. So this is the greatest, you guys. So my parents, they got divorced when I was 18. That's not the greatest part of the story, but they got divorced when I was 18. And
I didn't know that. So really, you grew up with both of your parents.
Yes. And
okay.
I would agree with you, Jessica. Like my dad has you know what? Everybody has their faults and their strengths, right? So he wasn't a great husband to my mom, but he did, I would say, he always made a point of like taking us on a vacation. Now, granted, it was usually to like a cabin and we went fishing and whatever. It wasn't like an elaborate vacation, but he always made a point to do that and all that. But anyway, when I was 18 years old, they got divorced and I was the only kid of my siblings that really was actually close with my dad. So when I went to college, I went to community college, and my dad worked at John Deere. And at the same time, he had a lot of back problems, and he had some surgeries. And so he was on, I don't even know if it was considered disability, or I'm not quite sure. But in any case, he went to college the same time I went to college. At the same college. So I actually saw my dad on campus as I was walking around.
Really?
Yes. And I was in oral communications class and we were doing our speeches, which I'm just going to tell you right now, a tidbit. I never, ever wrote down a speech or planned a speech. I literally stood up in front of the room and just talked and I got an A. So whatever. That's probably.
Of course you did.
Loved it. Of course you did.
I was like.
And here you are.
I was like, I'm just going to talk to you about some stuff. But anyway. One of the ladies in my class was older as well, and she made a speech about her, and let's keep in mind this is like the late 90s, so she made a speech about her doing like a personal ad, like in the newspaper, about finding a date. You know what I mean? Like a dating ad. I don't even know what they're called, but she was talking about how and I loved her speech because she was like, I put out this personal ad because I'm trying to find, like a partner and da-da-da-da. And at the end of her speech, she said, so if you guys know anyone, and it was so cute. Anyway.
Your dad is like,
wait, your dad's in the,
he
was in the class with you?
No, it gets better. So he was not in the class with me. But later, a couple of weeks later, I'm walking around campus. I see my dad and I'm like sitting there, me and my dad are hanging out, talking. And this woman walks up and says hi to my dad. And he's like, hi, and she walks away and he goes, oh, she keeps asking me out.
And did you...
Yes,
he didn't know that she had this ad.
No, and I was like, Dad, no, she really wants to find a partner. I was like, you should get to know her.
You guys should really do this.
I know, but
that's funny.
It was adorable to see, like, your like 50-year-old dad, like she keeps asking.
So you guys hung out together in college is what you're telling me.
A little bit.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
Core, what do you got?
Yeah, so my story is probably similar. My parents were divorced when I was 2. And so my mom raised us, and my dad struggled with alcoholism for the majority of our childhood. So he would be in our life and great, and then not great, and so it was very much an estranged relationship. I think it's better now, but it's been definitely rocky. But when he wasn't in our life, it was really difficult. But when he was, he's been a great dad to me. And I would say one of my favorite memories of my dad. So I was a softball player. I played sports, and my dad volunteered when I was in high school to be our high school assistant coach. And I remember this one summer, I got picked to be on a summer softball team, and my softball glove was falling apart. And for those of you that don't know, when you get a new softball glove, like it's hard to use. It's really like a lot of like you got to break it in.
Yep.
And so he took me to the store and I got this glove. Super exciting. It was a really expensive softball glove, but he's like, yeah, like, let's get this one. And I go and I'm like, oh my gosh, like, it's so hard to use and close. And he's like, you'll get it. He's like, let me take it and I'll get it worked in for you. And I don't, you probably don't understand. So the glove, we bought it and it was like a light tan. And he took it over the weekend and he's like, I'll bring it back to softball practice on Monday. And I didn't really think that much about it. And so I showed up to softball practice and asked him for my glove, and he gets it out of his car and it's a dark brown glove. And I looked at it and I'm like, did you get me a new glove? And he's like, no, this is your glove. He had spent the entire weekend oiling this glove and getting it all worked in. He had rope with a softball in it, so like the webbing of it had a softball, imprint, or like the mold of it. So this, I opened it up, it was absolutely perfect, and it was one of the best gifts I've probably ever gotten from my dad was this glove. And so that was one of my good memories of my
Do you
dad.
still have that glove?
Yeah.
What? Of course you.
I was gonna say
my neighbor has a couple of softball kids, and I had went out. They were having was having some challenges with some of their pitchers and their batting, and so I just like literally a few months ago I went over and I got my glove out and did a little impromptu pitching lesson.
I feel like that should be the photo of this episode.
Is my glove
your softball glove?
I love that. I
love that too.
I love that story. Thank you guys for sharing that. And I want to talk a little bit about, so when I was getting my master's in psychology, one of the things that I loved doing was not writing papers, but when we had to write a paper specifically on case studies. So I would literally spend like hours and hours like listening to case studies and recordings and different things. And this was a big area of interest to me because, again, I had my own healing journey about, father relationships. And I want to ask, because a lot of times people don't think about your dad being your first love, right? That is, I know it kind of sounds weird, but it really is for a little girl the first time that you love someone, that you see someone in a way that is a man. And I think people don't realize that there is a connection with our relationships with men based on that relationship. So I want to ask, have you guys, I shared my thing of, I made the connection that I would date older men and all these other things. Are there some things that you now look back and you can make the connection in terms of your relationship with your dad, or even who your dad was? Jamie, you mentioned your mom and your dad wasn't the best husband. I mean, can you guys tell me anything about how have you ever identified those connections in your own relationships based on how your relationship was with your dad?
I'm interested in, I guess, a little bit more about what you've learned, because my stepdad was like the greatest dad that you could ever want.
Yep.
Like my relationship now, and he passed away a handful of years ago, which was devastating to like our whole family, because he was just awesome. He was just loving, helpful, hardworking, just an amazing man. And like the relationship I'm in now, it's like I always say to him, I wish you would have met him. He is just like him.
Okay,
so it's not necessarily my dad, but like but granted, keep in mind, my stepdad was my stepdad for 20 years.
Right. And so that's what I mean. So I'll give you an example of, you mentioned some of the things that I learned. So father-daughter relationships are known to impact women's self-esteem, trust, and expectations in a relationship. So as an example, we don't even realize sometimes that, and I see this, and it's like I make the connection a lot of times. There's a young lady that I'm mentoring that is going through a divorce, and she had no idea. And when we talk about the abuse that she has gone through in the last 15 years of this marriage, it's very much so like the abuse that her mom and her dad went through. And we don't realize that sometimes we gravitate to that abusive nature of a
Like the
man because it's comfortable.
it's like
Because
familiar.
yes, because it's familiar.
Mhm.
So when you think about your parents' relationship, have you identified or have you thought about some things that you maybe have experienced that could have been connected to that in your own relationships?
Oh my gosh, yes. Corlin.
I've researched exactly what you've said because I look back, especially when I was young in
Yeah.
my high school, and the
Yep.
people that I chose to date were a representation, I think, of me needing affirmation, approval,
Yep.
acceptance. And it's 1,000% that I, again, have issues with I have issues with my relationship with my father, and it's played out in the relationships that I have. In fact, I would say I've shared this with my husband. Is my husband is the exception to the rule of the other people that I've dated. Like, my husband is different. Like, it's funny. Like, I would choose to date people that were chasing me versus me chasing them,
Mhm.
if that makes sense. And that was
Mhm.
like people, like my own, like, subconscious, like, people liked me. Oh, I guess I kind of like you, versus like my husband. Like, I loved him, and he, like,
Right.
I was super attracted to him, and I was chasing him more so than, you know what I'm saying, is that, and that was a different
That's self-esteem. That's
Yeah,
self-esteem
is.
because you
1,000%.
needed that. Yeah.
Confidence too. It's
Yeah.
it's your
You know,
self-confidence.
and the other thing I would say, I remember this instance distinctly. So my husband was worked with youth, and I would help him. And I remember this one day. It was a Wednesday night. The parents are coming in to pick up their kids. We're just wrapping up youth group, and I remember this one family, a super great family, dad, husband and wife, 3 kids, and there was a couch sitting outside the youth group room, and the dad was sitting on the couch waiting for his daughter to come in, and his daughter was maybe like 14, 15 years old at the time. And I was doing check-in or check-out, and the girl comes out of the door. She sees her dad sitting on the couch, and she's like, "Hey, Dad, how are you?" And she goes over and just jumps in his lap, sits on his lap, gives him a big hug, and they like have a conversation about how the night went, how his day went. And they just had this really beautiful interaction. And I remember sitting there in this chair. I have never had that experience with my dad. I would never think to jump in his lap or anything like that. And I actually found myself being a little jealous of that situation, like just really
Valid.
wanting to have that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they had no idea that I saw it, and it wasn't even remarkable for them at all. It was just
Right.
a day in the
Normal.
life. Yeah.
Yeah.
But I remember it very vividly, thinking like, I wonder what that looks like to have that kind of relationship with your father, because I never did.
Yeah, yeah. And it's important. So I want our listeners
Yeah.
to, and I do know that we do have dad listeners. So for all of those girl dads, like, it's important. And I know some people don't like the term and it sounds a little weird, date your daughter, but date your daughter. And know that your relationship with your spouse, and of course, this goes for kids in general, but we're just speaking specifically about dads and daughters. It matters when they look at that relationship. And that's kind of where I was going, Jamie, is that, we don't think about this, but when you say my dad wasn't a good husband, even though you identified that as a kid, somehow we still attract that. And somehow we still find ourselves in those situations. And I think that sometimes dads really underestimate, whether it's how they speak to their wives, how the man that they are is not just impacting your wife. It is impacting generations after you. And it's a big deal. It matters. Now I want to switch gears a little bit and go to you, Jamie, from the standpoint of you have 3 daughters. Okay. And no, you're not like myself. I'm on my 3rd marriage. Hopefully you will soon to be on your 3rd marriage, and that's okay. That's what's going to make us experts. Okay.
Call me out.
That's what we're here to do.
You guys are just trying it out.
We're just kissing a lot of frogs. I mean, whatever.
I point that out because tell me about how, because I also want to call out moms that really need to understand the importance of supporting the relationship. Okay, your relationship is over, but you have daughters and you really need to make sure that you encourage the relationship, especially when sometimes these are good guys. Just you might be a good guy. We just weren't good for each other. But I need to make sure that I'm not that baby mama that is like hating on that relationship because of our own baggage that sometimes we carry with the relationship. So tell us, have you experienced that? Have you been guilty of that? And how'd you work through it to make sure that your daughters had a relationship with the dad, whether it was a good dad or whether he was a piece of shit dad?
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I was thinking, I actually made notes before we had this.
Did you know I was going to go here?
I didn't, but I was hoping that you
I was
would
very
because
prepared.
yes, I'm going to say I have two really, very positive things that happened out of very negative situations. Like my first marriage was very fast. We had two kids really fast. And then he left us and he disappeared for 10 years. We didn't know where he was. I didn't no contact whatsoever. But when my two older, so from age 2 and 3, my two oldest daughters, I was like mom and dad. There was no dad at all.
And how did you talk about that, by the way? Like, what did you tell them about him? What did you say?
I was honest about everything. However, when they were younger, I omitted anything that would have made him seem like a bad person. Because I don't think anyone's a bad person. I think people make choices and things happen in their lives and there's negatives and positives. But I was honest with them. You know, when they're like, "Where's my dad?" I'm like, "I'm going to be honest with you. I don't know. He was here." You know, I definitely tried to come at it in a healthy way, believe me or not. But
Did you tell them stories about him?
Not really, actually. Okay. I made the choice that had he been in their lives, he could have told them his stories, and that wasn't where I wanted to be. And that's come up. You know, he's said, for example, he's a veteran, and he brought that up to my daughter. I'll get into this in just a second. And he's like, "Did your mom not tell you anything about me?" And and this might be bad, this might be wrong, I don't know, but I chose, like, if you want to tell them about you, you should be here. I'm not going to say anything bad, but you know, that's your story. It's not my story. So anyway, when the girls were getting ready to go to college, he had come back a little bit sporadically and asked if he could try to have a relationship with them and this and that. And so I had asked him, "Hey, you know, we have two kids going into college right now, and I have to co-sign loans for them. And, you know, is there any chance you could just co-sign one of the kids? Take one. Can you just help me with one of them?" And he said, I'll do college for one if you do college for the other. And so he stepped up. I mean, granted, it's 18 years later, but he stepped up and has helped my daughter. He took one, I took the other. Anyway, he did make it right, you know, in that sense, where he stepped up and took care of that, came back, apologized, you know, made things, life has turned around a bit, whatever. So, but yeah, he brought it up like, "Hasn't your mom told you anything about me?" But it was truly like, you could go, you have had access to these children for their whole lives. So you could have. So, but I admire that because I think it's hard to swallow your pride, maybe, when you know you've made mistakes. And I admire him for that. I'm incredibly grateful that he did that and still has a relationship with my one daughter because of that. And two, you know, I was married again.
Yeah.
And it's funny, we go to...
And kudos to you, by the way, for trying again and not giving up. Go ahead.
One more time.
Third time's a charm. I will attest to that. Third time is a charm, girl. Yeah. Don't even worry about it. You get there.
Yeah. So
soon.
Yep. He doesn't listen. It's fine.
Right. Okay. Shout out to soon to be husband number 3. Go ahead.
Yeah. So Sophie, my youngest daughter, you know, he's super involved with his children, all of his children. He's remarried and has kids with his new wife and stuff.
I'm like, said all of his children, like there's 10 of them, Jamie. How many are there?
There's like 4. There's 4. You know, we go to the games together. We go to the concerts together. And multiple times I've had people say to me, "Oh my gosh, you guys get along so well. Like, this is admirable, like that you guys do." And I'm like, well, if we got along that well, we'd probably still be married. But I love
we do this well.
Yeah. But we have worked so incredibly hard on parenting together. And I would say, like, I mean, I thank him constantly and he thanks me constantly about us just like, even when we're getting in fights about how to raise the kids or doing things with the kids, we always bring it back to what's the most important thing right now. It's the children. It's our daughter. Nothing else matters. And so I love that. And I'm not going to say swallow your pride, but I love that parents, dads especially, even though you're divorced and even though there's another person in your life or whatever the case is, that they come back and I love that they know what's most important, which is your kids together and raising them and getting along for their sake.
Yeah.
And so, yes. So I both of them, I mean, I have 2 ex-husbands, but I can say very positive things about both of them in terms of being a father. And I wish that upon everyone. I wish, you hate seeing, the social media posts and the things about people saying deadbeat dads or this or that. And it's like, it takes a lot of work, but it can be done.
Yeah. And listen, for me, it's always reverting back to God's word, which is sometimes you have to speak those things that are not as if they are. And so stop calling him a deadbeat dad and maybe call him a good dad, even if he's not a good dad, and speak life over that relationship instead of speaking death. Now I know that Sophie is young, but do you see a difference? And I'm sure she's had a boyfriend, but when you look at your daughters and you understand the relationships that they have with their dad and in the relationships that they have, I'm sure you see a difference, right?
Oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, she's me.
Yeah.
She's just a little mini me, but even on Father's Day, I was like, you know how I do. So she made her dad a collage of pictures of the 2 of them and framed it and everything. And then she bought him a t-shirt that said like, I have the world's most awesome daughter, and herself a t-shirt that says I have the world's most awesome dad. And they wore them together for like, that's what my kid did for her father. It's like,
I love that. I meant to ask you, Corlin, so your mom never remarried. Did you ever have anybody outside of your dad that you thought was like a father figure?
No. I mean,
and your mom never remarried.
My mom never remarried. She seen a couple guys here and there, but they weren't father figures. And I was already when she started dating, I was significantly into high school and into college. And so it wasn't like, I wasn't looking for a dad at that point, right? Or like a father figure. No, my mom was my mom and my dad for most of my childhood. And she showed up in that fashion too, right?
Yeah.
She just, just as like just you, Jamie, right? You just figure it out and you do all the things, right?
Yeah.
Did you know that?
I will say though that my husband's dad was a fantastic, and I'm not comparing our fathers at all, but I think that one of the sweetest things that I had heard my husband's dad say when we had a child. So our little guy was probably 1, maybe even younger than that, but his dad would want to watch Grayson, like literally like take him like by himself, like a grandpa, like having an infant, right? Which I'm like, are you sure? Do you really want to do this? And his mom was around a little bit or whatever, but I remember him saying that this little boy and I, we're gonna be best friends.
You've said that on another episode, and it makes me want to cry because that's the sweetest thing.
And I just thought that, and then also when you know full perspective that my husband and his dad had a little hard go at it, and they had come full circle and, really good relationship in the last several years of his life. But when they were young, it was hard. So not only watching Grandpa make that choice to want to invest in my son in that way, I just was like, thought that was so incredibly cool. But and the other thing I will want to say is that I feel like I keep coming back is that I absolutely want to have a healthy relationship with my dad, and it's been work. But I think one of the big things that I realized a while ago, and I think this is why I keep giving my dad grace and second chances and all the things, and why I hopefully he gives me, because I feel like probably I need some learning points too. But my dad had a horrible relationship so I've learned with his dad.
Mm-hmm.
It was significantly unhealthy, and his dad was an alcoholic. And so he never had the example
Yep.
of a dad,
How
a
to
good
be a
dad.
good dad, right?
Yeah. And so then it comes down to my dad and how my dad's relationship with my older brother
Yeah.
also.
Yeah.
It's horrible. Their relationship is horrible, but nobody's learned.
Yeah.
Nobody's learned how to look at that and
Yeah.
be. And so it's like at some point and then my older brother has stopped the train, right? He actually was a single dad to my nephew. Mom was out of the picture, and watching my brother show up, he was going through some tough times when my nephew was born, and now my nephew is in his young 20s. But when my nephew was little, my brother stepped up and was like, I'm going to raise this little one, and I'm going to make different decisions for my son that I didn't have. And I can see him, how he's stepped up to be a really good dad. So maybe that's it. Maybe my brother stopped the generational repetitiveness to really go through. So
you said so much there, Corlin. I'm glad that
that was awesome.
Yeah, that you brought this up. First and foremost, what I heard that was so important is that just giving grace and forgiveness, it's never too late. I mean, as adults, it is never too late. As long as your dad is still breathing and on this earth, I would encourage you to go down that path of forgiveness and all of that, because the saying, forgiveness is more for you than the other person anyway.
Yeah.
I love the fact that you called out that same thing in for my husband. Like, his dad was away, he was that way, and he at some point said, I am going to stop this right here at this generation. Like, I'm not going to be that person that continues to pass this on. I think that's the part that people don't stop and think about, is that it's not just about this life. It's about you getting out of here and the next generation, and you being part of something that just repeats itself over and over again. So I think we really need to think about that. I know we are out of time, and I really enjoyed this conversation. This is another one that we can go for a part 2.
I know. I didn't hear anything about your husband or your dad. Just a little tidbit at the beginning. I was like, wait, Jessica,
right.
What else do you
again, and there's plenty of other times to talk about John Lane. Like I said, I love my dad, but just wasn't a good, and I'm thankful for it all, right? Because I learned a lot of what not to do through him. And I thank God that I was able to identify that before it was too late for me. And my husband, Mr. Smith, great dad. And if it wasn't for his dad not being the greatest dad, I don't know that he would have that much, motivation to be the great dad that he is. I'll share 2 things since you made me do it, Jamie.
Yes, do it.
On Father's Day, Hayden, so this was, Saturday. I said, I'm last minute. I have no idea what we're getting this guy. What the hell do you get a guy that has everything, right? Like, that's facts in this house. So I had this anxiety of, what am I going to get him? And I said, I got to go to Costco first. And we walk into Costco, and Hayden says, Mom, I know exactly what we can get, Dad. And I'm like, what? He's like, the Nintendo Switch 2. And I was like, what? He's like, yeah, the Nintendo Switch 2. I said, Hayden, do you really think you're going to okey doke me in like, what? So he's like, no, just hear me out. He's like, Dad really wants it for us. I said, for us. And he's like, yeah, for us. He's like, he's been calling all over. He's been every weekend. I was like, why is this the first that I'm hearing about? He's like, he probably didn't want you to know, because it's like $500 and some for this thing. And I was like, for a game? And he's like, yeah. Long story short, the kid might have a sales future after all, because I told him he was a horrible salesperson. He totally sold me on this thing. And I was like, okay, well, you know what? We're going to give it to God. We're going to put it in God's hands. And he was like, what? He was like, but I can search and see. I go, no, I'm going to walk up to the counter and ask them, do they have any? He's like, Dad's been calling Costco every week. They don't have any. I said, well, if it wasn't meant to be, it wasn't meant to be. So I go up to the counter. The woman's name is Jessica. She looks at me and she says, how can I help you? And I said, would you happen to have any Nintendo Switches in stock? And then she's like, as a matter of fact, she goes, we have 2. And the guy next to her is the manager. He goes, we have what? He's like, when did we get those in? She's like, we got them in the beginning of the week. And this was on the weekend. She's like, he goes, well, who the hell told me? People have been calling every day, all day. And I've been telling them we don't have any. She's like, I said, oh. And I looked at Hayden. He was like, yes. So we get it. I said, Hayden, I'm telling you right now, if your dad doesn't want this and it was for you, I said, this shit is going back. I said, you are not keeping it. And he was like, trust me, he's going to be so happy. This kid was so excited for many of reasons. And when Will opened the gift, back up. But on the way home, I asked him, I said, $500 is a lot of money for a Father's Day gift. I'm like, and he's just like, yeah. He goes, but don't you want your husband to know what a great father he is and how much you love him? And I said, well, you tell me, why is he such a great dad? To hear this kid go on about how his dad just doesn't care for him and wants the best for him and shows such a great example, and all the things that he takes the time to show him and speaks to him. And he says, and then every time I do something bad, he doesn't just want to get a belt and whoop me. And I looked at him, I was like, is that a shot at me? I'm like, because you don't even get enough whoopings, by the way. And he goes, no, Dad just talks to me. And he's like, and he teaches me. And he went on all the way home about why his dad is such a great dad. And it was like, it warmed my heart to hear him articulate it in the way that he did. But anyway, Will loved the gift. Okay. And then he said, oh, I think Hayden needs one of his own. He has money. I said, no. He said the gift was for both of you. You guys are going to share it.
Play it together.
But yeah, he definitely wanted it. So it was a score because I thought I was going to spend my whole weekend trying to figure out what the hell we were going to buy the guy.
I love that. And isn't it cool that your kids have this totally different perspective, and they know the things that you don't know, and like they notice the things that you don't notice? I love it.
For the first time, because when he said, I got an idea, I'm like, Hayden, no, your idea is going to be stupid. He's like, no, I really don't. That's my parenting. Stupid idea, kid. That's a stupid idea. Anyway, I just want to close out, and hopefully we still have listeners that are still here, and that for moms that are not with the dads, please speak life into our dads. Especially, it's important whether you have sons or daughters. But I hope this episode really helped you understand, because I think we talk a lot about how sons need their dads. Daughters need their dads too. Mm-hmm. Shout out to all the dads out there that are doing it, that are great. We appreciate you. And for mothers, there's help, there's healing. It's never too late. I hope this helped you identify some things about yourself that kind of go back to the root of the problem. I think real healing is always about going back to the root of the problem. And there may be some things that you didn't realize that are the root of the problem is your relationship with your dad. And if we focus on healing that, whether they're here or not, whether it's through therapy or whether it's through building that relationship, let's get to the root of the problems and let's heal. Listen, follow us on Instagram and TikTok and Facebook, and subscribe on YouTube, Lead Like a Girl Lab. And please let us know other things that you want to talk about. We are here to talk all things through storytelling and empowering everyday women. So thank you for listening.